Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Wordsmith Playtime, a conversation about why plays work. My name is Ian Mozzie. I am the de facto technical director here at Wordsmith Theater Company, a Houston-based theater company dedicated to the creation of new theatrical works from the planning stages to full production. Here on Playtime, we invite members of the Houston theater community to choose a play that they enjoy and are familiar with, and explain what about it makes it effective. Joining us tonight is Timothy Eric, who's going to discuss Gem of the Ocean by August Wilson. Thank you for joining us, Timothy.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
So for those who haven't been here before, here's how this is going to work. Timothy is going to spend the first part of tonight's event discussing the play. I'm going to step aside, turn my camera off, turn my microphone off, but I will still be monitoring the Facebook chat. So you should all be asking questions, because the second part of this is I'm going to come back, ask Timothy some of those questions that you have, and he's going to answer them. Thank you all. Take it away, Timothy.
Well, thank you. Thank you. All right. I hope everybody has had a wonderful Monday back. So yeah, Gem of the Ocean, hang on just a second, by August Wilson. I love this play. I performed this play. I'm not going to even try to remember the year or anything like that. It was a good while ago, I should say. What I really like about this play, if you know, in terms of August Wilson and the Cycle of 10, just to really briefly go over that, he wrote what had been named the African American cycle of plays, a play depicting each decade starting in 1900 and ending in in the late 1990 to 2000 rather, 10 plays. I think somewhat recently has been officially renamed the American Cycle as an honor to him, because he was a great American playwright and no longer a great African American playwright. No longer, of course, he's still African American, but he's no longer with us. But there was a distinction that was bestowed upon his legacy, his body of work. So Gem of the Ocean is one of the latter plays. It was written, I believe it was the 9th play written while he was ill, actually. But it is one of the earlier plays in the cycle, and it centers around a central character named Aunt Esther, who is a figure that is mentioned in several of the other plays that take place in Pittsburgh. All of the plays in the cycle take place in Pittsburgh, well, all of them except one. I don't want to get into two, I believe. Anyway, it depicts Aunt Esther, again, a kind of a mystical figure, purported to be over 350 years old. And this is the play, because we hear about her in Two Trains Running. We hear about her in a couple of other plays of sayings and things that she's, if you find yourself in spiritual trouble, Aunt Esther can help you out. She can cleanse you and that kind of thing. So we finally meet her, which was kind of a treat for all of the August Wilson fans that had followed those plays as they had come out over the years. And it takes place in her home. But what I'm going to talk about ad nauseum, I should say, is this idea of how Wilson uses the spirit of Sankofa, which is the idea of Sankofa. So this whole, and it's an Akan word, a Ghanaian word that translates literally into return and get it, return and get it. That one's future is made more sturdy, more promising, more impactful by focusing on one's past and going back to pick up the balls, as it were. in modern lingo. And that's what really, really fascinated me about the play, is his fearlessness with mysticism. You know, his plays, if you're familiar, have a had at times a tinge of, you know, Piano Lesson, of course, had a ghost. You know, so he's never been afraid to go into mysticism. But I think what was so marked about this play is that he plays with it, so to speak, and we'll talk about that shortly. Um, but and we'll kind of go through that. So that was the thing. That was the thing that really, really struck me, is that one of the characters, Citizen, who's kind of the actor in the cycle of events, has, you know, something occurs in his life, and he comes to her because he needs to get his soul washed. Um, and he has been told by, you know, members of the community to come to her because she can take care of that for him, and all his problems will be over, you know, as he puts it. And so, and that, for me as an actor, you know, because I played Citizen, was really, really fun, because of course you can kind of weave in your own narrative about the ball that you dropped in, you know, in your life, if you know, if you take that approach to acting. And so, yeah, and I have tons of them to pick from. So, but it was, you know, that idea of being able to reclaim one's life and one's uprightness, you know, through a bit of cleansing of the past. So he has to face this thing that he's you know, burdened himself with in order to get there. And there's a small adventure that happens in the play, you know. But again, I said, when I would, so to come back to what I was talking about a little bit earlier in terms of playing with it, and we'll get it. Wilson kind of plays with this idea of mysticism because you're not really sure whether to take it seriously or not. And we'll talk about, you know, how it doesn't matter. If you're, you know, a student of the play, if you're in the play, directing the play, or watching the play, you know, it doesn't matter whether you buy into the mysticism or not. And I think that, to me, speaks to the power of the concept of Sankofa, and further legitimizes to me, because it is a practical thing. You know, it doesn't have to be so weaved, you know, and interwoven with mysticism. It's just a practical approach to how one governs one's, you know, how one can govern one's life. So with all that, I'm not going to do any of that. I'll just go straight to the play. Pardon. Play. Okay. Gem of the Ocean. So the opening, lights come up on Eli in the kitchen. It's late night. He's preparing to retire. You know, gets a knock at the door. It's late. It's urgent. Eli, you know, answers, "This is a peaceful house." And Citizen says, "I come to see Aunt Esther." You know, he's desperate. "You got to come back tomorrow. You don't talk to nobody on Tuesday." "What do you mean come back? People say go see Aunt Esther. This is 1839 Wiley, ain't it? Come back Tuesday." "I ain't going nowhere." So they have a small altercation there in the home, and which is broken up by, you know, the cracking of the door from Aunt Esther's room is how we played it. And, you know, the shaft of light, you know, like streaking across the floor as she opens the door. And she says, "Didn't he say Tuesday, baby? Go on, I'll see you on Tuesday." So he says, "Okay." So and it startles him enough. And of course, you know, it starts this thing with her power, right? To steal things with her voice. You know, it gives her this ominous presence that she has people in the home who protect her and work for her and this kind of thing. And it's a very beautiful home, old home. And so he comes there and finally catches up with Aunt Esther. And okay, so this is kind of crazy because I can't see here. The highlighting has taken my text. and done something weird with it. So anyway, he finally comes back. He meets Aunt Esther, and he tells her that, you know, I need to see you. I can't wait till, you know, come till Tuesday. He comes and sneaks in the house the next day, and before Tuesday, climbs in through a window, and finally meets Aunt Esther. She discovers him in the kitchen, and he says, you know, look, I can't wait till Tuesday. I got to get my soul washed. I need you. I need you really badly. And so she asks him, there's been a death in the community very recently. A man was accused of stealing a bucket of nails from a work site and was chased down by the police and jumped into the river, the Monongahela River, and insisting that he had not stolen this bucket of nails, and then and dies and drowns. And so Aunt Esther brings this up to him. You know, she says, "You remind me of my June bug," you know, and then she says, there was a man who ran and jumped in the river, said he stole a bucket of nails. Did you hear about that? He died a lonely death. Was nobody but him. All them people standing around, but he was the only one who died. And so he says, Citizen says, and I read it word for word, except for my little highlighting here has betrayed me. He says, I heard about it, you know, but you know, why did he, you know, why didn't he just tell the people, why didn't he jump in the river and that kind of thing? And she said, well, Jesus Christ was falsely accused. He died a bitter death on the cross. This man was like Jesus. He said he'd rather die innocent than to live guilty. You can go on ahead and eat your bread, Mr. Citizen. Black Mary will be back in a minute. I'll have her make pot of soup and some cornbread. You like cornbread? You look like you can eat a whole pan yourself. So he's in the home now. And Black Mary, who's referred to as kind of her assistant and heir au pair to the job, to the task of being kind of a mother, an elder in the community. So Citizen, of course, meets Mary, and while talking, says to her about, you know, his problem. You know, Citizen's a very straightforward guy. He said, I couldn't wait till Tuesday. I got to get my soul washed, okay? Real bad. You ever had your soul washed? So she says, God's the only one that can wash your soul. So he said, the people say he sees to see Aunt Esther. One man said he came to see Aunt Esther, all his problems went away. He said she can help anybody. So Black Mary says, you got to help yourself. Aunt Esther can help you if you're willing to help yourself. She ain't got no magic power. Which is, again, it sort of, again, lends itself to this sense of fear and doubt. And, you know, he needs what he needs. And he's only got this clue that he needs to find this lady. He doesn't know anything about what she's going to do to him. She just knows what he needs out of it. And that, you know, well, the people say is this, and she said, well, you got to help yourself. He's not sure what all of that means. So Wilson still has Citizen yearning for direction and trying to find a path. And so he finally, you know, at some point gets to, there we go. That's how we do it. He tells her, he finally sits down with her and he says, I stole a bucket of nails. The mill wouldn't pay me, so I stole a bucket of nails. They say Garrett Brown stole it. He ran and jumped in the river. Told myself to tell him I did it, but every time I started to tell him something, and something got in the way. I thought he was gonna come out the river, but he never did. I looked up and he had drowned. It's like I got a hole inside of me. If I ain't careful, it seems like everything would leak out that hole. What to do, Miss Tyler? Now, of course, Wilson here is drawing this parallel between this yearning, the hole inside us all, obviously, but obviously with Black people. Yeah, although with, you know, not totally parallel because Citizen had committed this act, but certainly, you know, the emptiness, you know, that he feels is sort of plays sort of a parallel in here. But in my opinion. So, see here, you know. All right. So she says, see, Mr. Citizen, Right now, that bucket of nails is at the center of your life. You can only have one. You only have one life, Mr. Citizen. It's your life. Can't nobody else claim it. You ain't never gonna forget that man who jumped in the river. There are times when it will come and take hold of you and shake you. Ain't nothing you can do about that. It's them in between times that you can do something about. You got to find something else to be at the center of your life. You got to find out why it was important for Garrett Brown to die rather than to take his 30 days in jail. Do you know why he didn't come out of the water, Mr. Simpson? He says, do you know why he chose to die rather than be branded a thief? The citizen says, because he didn't do it. She says, we know he didn't do it, but why, Mr. Citizen? That's what we're trying to find out, why he would rather die than say he was a thief. And the citizen says, because everybody would know. When they see him, they say, there go the man who stole the bucket of nails. Like, he's talking about himself. So she said, well, he ain't care if nobody else knew it. He did it, whether he did it or not. He didn't do it for the people standing around watching. He did it for himself. So then she brings up to, you know, the story of Peter from the Bible. Peter denied Jesus 3 times before the cock crowed. That's what the Bible says. So again, so now Wilson has introduced some sort of path to him. You know, it's obscure, so to be sure. But what she's trying to do is get him to understand that, you know, the burden is on him to lift, and doing it in a roundabout way, obviously. But she's trying to get him to see, you know, I don't, you know, it's not, and they don't talk literally about washing the soul at this point, but it's certainly something that she's saying, you know. And I love the way she engenders his them, and then this is what we're trying to find. What we're trying to find out, you know. So she grafts him into the mission, you know, that we got to find this out. We're investigating this thing, but you're going to have to do the work, which is clear. But he did make the confession, which I think was the start down this path, this adventure for him, so to speak, you know. And the stakes were higher because he felt the guilt of someone having died because of something that he did. And so, so she says, I'm going to help you. I'm going to tell you about the city of bones. But first, I'm going to send you upriver. When you get there, I want you to look around and find 2 pennies lying on the ground. They got to be lying side by side. You can't find one on one street, on another street. They got to be lying side by side. If you see one laying by itself, just let it lay there. When you find them 2 pennies, I want you to put them in your handkerchief and bring them straight back to me. Where's your coat and hat? Get your coat and hat. So then she said, Mr. Sisters, I want you to follow the Monongahela River, clear up the Blawnox. There's a man named Gilson Grant. Ask anybody where you find him. Gilson Grant. Tell him Aunt Esther sent you. You be careful, Mr. Citizen. Don't forget, Gilson Grant. He's going to give you something. Then you take that and put that in your handkerchief with the 2 pennies. Bring it straight back to me. Go on now, Citizen. Bolts out the door, right? So Black Mary, again, the arrow pair, always inquisitive. She said, what the 2 pennies for? Why he got to find 2 pennies? So she says, that's only to give him something to do. He think there's power in them 2 pennies. You know, he think when he find them, all his troubles will be over. But he needs to think that before he can come face to face with himself. The sense of accomplishment, the sense of, you know, a first step on his journey, a small task to do, you know, a small thing to present, I suppose, because it doesn't deal with the act that he did, but it certainly, I think when the idea being that when he completes the task, you know, he will feel a sense of worthiness, a sense of accomplishment, a sense that he, you know, that he has a bit of good, that fate is looking out for him, that, you know, something fatalistic like that, and finding 2 pennies laying on the ground side by side is a sign. You know, if he finds them and he sees them, then he certainly can start to buy into the idea that he is worthy of his soul being washed. And so he comes back. He has the 2 pennies. So he actually found 2 pennies laying side by side. He gives them to her. And then she says, Black Mary, go get the map, you know. And she goes upstairs and comes down with this map. And so she says, take a look at this map, Mr. Citizen. And see that right there? That's a city. It's only a half mile by half mile, but that's a city. It's made of bones, pearly white bones. All the buildings and everything made of bones. I seen it. I've been there, Mr. Citizen. My mother lived there. I got an aunt and 3 uncles lived down there in that city made of bones. You want to go there, Mr. Citizen? I can take you there if you want to go. That's the center of the world. In time, it will all come to light. The people made a kingdom out of nothing. They were the people that didn't make it across the water. They sat right down there. They say, let's make a kingdom. Let's make a city of bones. And so hearkening back to our ancestors, him introducing the power and the sorrow that comes, the visceral feelings of detachment and family, and the fact that she says my mother's there, feeds back into the idea of her being as old as she's purported to be. That she's the daughter of one who traveled across the ocean. And so, but again, totally reinforcing this whole, it's almost out of some, you can almost say it's sort of like some Disney-esque thing, give me the map, let's put out this map, this big mystical map in this city that this is a special map because it shows you the location of this city, this special place that was built by very special people. And again, it totally enthralls him. So, so she pulls out this bill of sale that for her house, and so she folds it into this boat, and she tells him that's a boat, and you're going to take a ride on this boat. Do you believe you can ride on that old boat, Mr. Citizen? And I think that's another, again, she laid out the task for him to find the 2 pennies. Wilson sort of lays down the gauntlet. It's easy for you to come and ask me to wash your soul. That takes no faith, but do you believe? And you're looking at the paper, and it's literally just a piece of paper folded into a little toy-looking boat. But she asked him, do you believe that you can ride on this boat? And he has to, he said, well, that's a piece of paper. She said, that's not what you call your ordinary boat. Look at that boat, Mr. Citizen. That's a magic boat. There's a lot of power in that boat. Power is something. Power is something. It's hard to control, but it's hard to stand in the way of it. God sweep the stars aside, Mr. Citizen. He don't let nothing stand in his way. God don't know nothing but the truth. That boat can take you to that city, Mr. Citizen. Do you believe it can take you to that city? If you can believe it can take you, God got room for everybody. So, and so there's more that she talks about with him. There's more, engendering the whole idea of the deity of God and the deity of his people. And so this is all new to him, it is all, and so she's effectively removed him from, Wilson has taken him out of the situation with the bucket of nails and placed him, in this place where he's wondering now about his place in the world, his purpose, his and love and forgiveness. These concepts of God and religion, are all not that he's never heard them before, but he's seeing them in a different light, because he knows now that there's something he's going to have to do, and so. But he still is hopeful that she's just going to touch him and say, you washed. He's not, totally bought in. But, and so she said, Black Mary comes down. She says, we got everything ready. Everything's set, and we're going to go to the city of bones. Okay. So they start this thing, her, Black Mary, the other gentleman that Eli, I believe his name, living in the house, they all are, okay, we going, and and you can tell that this is something that they do, this is something that has been done before, it's ritualistic. And that's the wonderful thing about ritual. They enjoy it. He starts to enjoy himself because he feels, he starts to sense a sense of, of adventure that he's going to get, find what he's needing, get rid of this sickness of guilt that he had. And so she tells him again, you hold on to them 2 pennies, Mr. Citizen, and you're gonna need them. Just Grant was supposed to give you a piece of iron. You ain't got that. You got to go without it. The iron would have made you strong. That's what Samson had. His strength wasn't in his hair. He had a piece of iron that made him strong of heart, and God found favor with it. You got to see if God find favor with you without that iron. Sally says, here, Sally Two Kings, which is another character in the play, who comes to visit Aunt Esther from time to time, and he's an old, he's a warrior spirit. And he says, here, put this piece of chain in your pocket. Now you got some iron. Justin Grant ain't the only one got iron. That chain link brought me good luck many a time. Go on, put it in your pocket. Now, they've not left the living room. They're still in the living room. So he says, I'm ready, Citizen says. So she says, you see this boat, Mr. Citizen? It's called the Gem of the Ocean. You're going to take a ride on that boat. Come on, Black Mary, Sally, Eli. Mr. Citizen is going to the city of bones. They're going to help us, Mr. Citizen. You can't never have enough help on the boat. Whatever happens, you hold on to that boat. You hold on to that boat and everything will be all right. Now, probably now is a good time to talk about this because this came up during the rehearsal process. What are we doing? Are they hustling this dude or is it real? And we finally decided, not that it was up to us. I mean, it's there in the text, but we finally discovered, let's say, that it didn't matter. The fact is, the result, the ends justify the means. So in some speak, there is, the way we played it, there was a power that was taking place, and it all started with Citizen, right? And that's the thing. And I think that and it doesn't, again, the pragmatism of Sankofa is still prevalent. The mysticism is still prevalent. It meant that it needed a character. It needed the story needed the Citizen to believe, to take the step, to honestly be forthright and come to this place where he needed what he needed, and the yearning for what he needed propels and takes him there, in his mind and in his spirit and in his body. So they start singing this song, we going to the city of bones, they're clapping and whatnot. But then there's this there's trouble on the boat, right? You ever seen a boat, Mr. Citizen? And this is while he's sitting there, and we have it staged where, he's sitting there and he's holding on to this boat and he's looking out and she's talking to him. She's talking to him in his ear and the other people are singing. You ever seen a boat, Mr. Citizen? A boat is made of a lot of things, wood and rope. The sails look like bed sheets blowing in the wind. They make a snap when the winds catch them. Wood and rope and iron, the workmen with their hammers rigging a boat is something. It takes a lot of men to make a boat, and it takes a lot of men to sail a boat. There were some brave men. They left their family and didn't know if they was ever going to see them again. They got on that boat and went out into the world. The world's a dangerous place, Mr. Citizen. It got all kinds of harms in it. Take God to master the world. The world is a rough place, but there's gold out there in the world. There's good luck out there in the world. Them brave men went looking for it. Remember I told you could take a ride on that boat. The wind catch up in them sails and you be off across the ocean. The wind will take you every which way. You need a strong arm to steer that boat. Don't you feel it, Mr. Citizen? Don't you feel that boat a rocking, just a rocking and a rocking, the wind blowing. And then Eli is talking. Sally is talking about the north wind got a mind of its own. You can't speak with it. So at some point, Citizen gets up and makes a sudden move to balance himself the stage direction. He says, it's moving. The boat's moving. I feel it moving. The land is moving away. She asks him, do you see the sky? He says, I see the sky. Yeah, what color is it? It's blue up close, but farther away is long, it's gray. And so they're going on this journey. And then she says, now, when we stage this, he talks about, I hear people talking, they saying, remember me. You know, there was some physicality of things that went along with this boat ride. And he trying to hold on to this boat, and, you know, and Eli and Sally began to, you know, act out as if they are, as if this is a boat that was, you know, that was sailing across the ocean to sell slaves, and that, you know, Citizen was is a slave. So we got physical with it, and they, you know, they slammed him down to the ground, and he dropped his boat, and he's, you know, and you know, they're miming as though they're whipping him, but he's, you know, and he's experiencing all these things in a physical manifestation, but they're not doing anything to him, you know. So he says, I don't see no people. They do. You see the people? Do you see them? He says, well, I hear people talking. He says, what they saying, Mr. Sidney? Do you know what they saying? It's like they singing, you know. Well, what they singing? They saying, remember me. So she said, what about the people? Where are the people? He said, I don't see no people. She said, I see the people chained to the boat. People you seen got some powerful gods, Mr. Citizen, but they ain't on the boat with them. They don't know how to call them on their own. So then Citizen says, they all look like me. They all got my face. And powerful moment, even though in the midst of all of this chaos is what's going on, because he is acknowledging that he's seeing family. He's seeing himself in these people. And the reflection that he's getting back is something that's encouraging and powerful for him. And so she says, breathe deep. Black Mary says, take a deep breath. Look at me. Look at me. It's Black Mary. You remember me? Take my hand. It's me, Black Mary. So he says, the people, they chained to the boat. She says, look at me, Mr. Citizen. Just leave. Look. She said, where am I? You're on the boat, Mr. Citizen. You're going to the City of Bones. Now, if you're a spectator witnessing all of this in the audience, you're not sure how to take all of this, right? But the idea is that, you know, he is believing it, and that's what makes it real for him. And so your boat, get your boat, Mr. Citizen. You can't go to the City of Bone without your boat. Get the boat. You can't go without your boat. I think we ended up giving him the boat back. And so he's, and so paraphrasing and kind of skipping ahead a little bit. So she says, do you, you know, he sees the city. And he says, there it is. It's made of bones, all the buildings and everything, head bones, leg bones, rib bones. The street looks like silver. The streets look like silver. The trees are made of bones. The trees and everything made of bone. And so Anesta says, do you see the gate, Mr. Citizen? He said, I see the gate. There are 12 gates, Black Mary says, you know, and 12 gatekeepers, Sally said. She says, if you go into the city, you can see my mother and all the people with their tongues on fire, glittering and dressed in the splendors. It's a sight like you ain't never seen. And so he yells out, I got my 2 pennies. So she says, then you got to pay the gatekeeper your passage and he'll let you in the city. Do you see the gatekeeper, Mr. Citizen? Yeah, I see him. And so he says, you got to tell him your name so he can write it down in the book. And you got to say, pay your passage. So he proudly yells out, Citizen Barlow, I got my 2 pennies. Now, and so he says, and they, you know, we had this little thing, you know, where Sally had become this gatekeeper, you know. And so they're acting out this thing in front of Citizens. So he's seeing them, but he's of course kind of caught up in this spiritual place. So he says, I got my 2 pennies. He says, he won't let me pass. They hold him at bay, and keep him from walking forward. So he says, he won't let me pass. He said, well, who is the gatekeeper, Mr. Citizen? Aunt Esther asked, is he someone you know? And so Citizen recoils in horror. He says he's struck dumb, the fact is he recognizes that he sees the face. He said, what is it, Mr. Citizen? What do you see? And so he cries out, he said, the gatekeeper is Garrett Brown, the man who jumped in the river. And you got to tell him, Mr. Citizen, Aunt Esther says. The truth has to stand in the light. You got to get your soul washed. So he, doesn't do that, right? He's fighting, he's struggling. How come you didn't come out the river? You were supposed to come out the water. And so Aunt Esther's on him. You got to tell him, Mr. Citizen, otherwise you'll never be right with yourself. Peter denied Christ 3 times. You might not get lucky like Peter to have 3 chances. You got to tell him now. And so he says, it was me. I done it. My name is Citizen Barlow. I stole the bucket of nails. And it's this really, of course, a visceral moment for him, that he confesses this and that he had wronged his brother. And so, Sally, who's playing the gatekeeper, moves aside and lets him pass. And then he cries out that the gate is opening. He's just overwhelmed with the sheer beauty of the city and the people. This is what August puts in the overwhelmed with the sheer beauty of the city and the people with the tongues on fire. Citizen Barlow, now reborn as a man of the people, sits down and begins to cry. So now there were a couple other plots that went on in there. I only picked out this one because this was the part of the play. Of course, I might be being a little bit favoritism because I played Citizen. I'll admit that. But at the same time, Citizen had more to do as it related to the other lines in the plot of the play. But just that one, the singular motion of him starting the play from a place of very, he was very, very heavy, very sad. He's a good-natured person. He owed the mill a lot of money, where he was in a situation where he had been working for the mill and, they're charging him for every little thing that he's doing. So you end up owing them money, even though you're working, you're not making any money. And he was almost like debt servitude that he was serving. And so he stole a bucket of nails and it cost someone their life. And he starts on this journey, and when I say, because different from so Sankofa saying return and get it, and so he goes to go back to where he went was so powerful because not only did he go and he saw his immediate past, but it was fused in with the past of his people, fused in with the past of his ancestry and the wrongs of slavery and the joy of belonging and family and community. All of that rushed up on him in a moment, and he was able to overcome and forgive himself enough to take the step of confession and then being embraced and embracing a new life and being reborn. So that was, that's to me, I think I've said this. I think it's one of the latter plays that Wilson wrote. He I think will I think in time as this play is done more because again it was one of the last ones. It will be probably one of his best works. I think he poured. If you ever, you should buy it and read it. Aunt Esther says so many more things and talks so much more about her ancestry and about slavery and the children that she's lost, the symbolism that he pours out into her, all of the children that she lost, and she named them after the stars, and just a beautiful tapestry of what Wilson wanted for Black people, that they find something to be at the center of their lives, something to fight for, and just a wonderful piece of work. And he poured a lot into it. So I think that's about it. So if
Yeah.
there's any questions, wake up.
Uh, so you're thinking that that what makes this play work is that theme of Sankofa, that theme of going back and getting it, and also the the way that Aunt Esther uh, plays to what Citizen needs, plays to yeah. So a
Yeah,
couple.
yeah, and gives him a sense of history. I mean, he's a simple guy. He doesn't come with a lot of of knowledge of anything. He's just a young man starting out in life, and so yeah, to give him a sense of talk about Africa and talk about it, and God and fuse those two together was mystifying for him, and it captured him, so to speak, and captures the audience. I think, yeah.
And it's that sense of it being personal to him that makes it work so well.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that she clues him along all the way. She brings up the conversation about Garrett dying. Because she suspects, that's something. Because it was a big deal. It's
Sure.
in a very close knit community, something like that happens. It's on the tongues of everybody. Everybody's talking about it, and then in comes this man says he needs a soul wife. So she kind of, hey, did you hear about that guy? And he's, what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
sure.
she's it's her story. It's her story. It's not his. But he, but certainly the idea of that journey that we all should take, have to take, and not just once in life, many times. But yet, I think laying out the blueprint for him and saying, you got to step forward. You have to step forward, and you got to do it in truth. You know.
Yeah, a couple months ago we had Denise O'Neil and James West on talking about Seven Guitars, which is another play in the same
Mm-hmm.
cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a similar to what they said made that play work, was that it was so personal and people could identify with it.
Oh yeah, yeah, and yeah, and again, it was interesting because other times that she's mentioned, it's always in that same context, but it's certainly not. People tell stories about having gone to see her. Sterling says that he went back there he went up there to see her, and other people tell, I think, another story about having gone to see her. And they never really get into a lot of detail. So it's not, you don't know what, you know her to have a wisdom and a strength and a power, but we've never seen any of that play out. So it's kind of surprising, I think, for if you're a fan, and you're waiting to see this whole thing, that when they start him on this path and they're singing these songs, it's like, whoa, okay, what's happening, But yeah, it's personal for him, and that's the key, that he believes it. It's sort of, I was thinking about that the other. Who was that? The Steve Martin did a movie some time ago. Long time. He played a even evangelical preacher that was not so honest, and had a traveling show, so to speak, and the kid, and he was a shyster and everything, and there was a young boy who was a cripple who touched the cross and was healed, so it's similar to that, it was real to the boy, and that's what made it real for him, and yeah.
And I would love to keep talking about this, but we are running out of time, and I think I have a couple of Wordsmith related announcements that I need to make.
Okay.
So normally we'd keep going on playtime like this, have another one in a couple weeks, but we were going to start our reading series back in March, and then the pandemic hit and we kind of had to cancel. Well, we still got the HAA grant money and we still need to spend it. So from now till the end of the year, we're going to basically speed run our reading series. We're going to put videos up of Zoom recordings of the readings of the plays. And we're going to have talkbacks with the playwrights. The first one is going to be, first talkback's going to be in a couple weeks. We normally would have wanted to have the reading go up tomorrow, but for scheduling reasons, we can't get it scheduled just yet. But That reading is going to go up probably sometime next week, and it is going to be of Everything You Can Do by Ian August. But yeah, the talkback's going to be Monday the 12th, 2 weeks from tonight. Same time, same place. We'll let you know when the reading video goes live. Please watch it and send us your comments and your questions for the playwright. Thank you to Timothy for joining us tonight. Thanks to everyone who's watching. Thank you for spending part of your Monday evening with us. Good night.